this is going to be great.
Welcome to the White House Pod. With David A.R.
Hey, well, I would like to welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. If you're listening on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Alexa, all other podcasts, we want to say thank you for joining us. And if you're not, if you actually want to see like Roger Neal's hair here, he looks unbelievable, and he is on. Go to our YouTube page, David A.R. White, and watch the White House Pod Dare to Dream right there. And you can see such amazing people like Roger Neal. But we have an amazing guest here, yes. And I want to get into this guest because this guest has been, I've had the pleasure of knowing for several years now. And he is an icon. He literally is an icon. I think he started acting when he was super young, only on like so many massive television shows. And you know, you know what? Just, ladies and gentlemen, unbelievable legend, Scott Baio, the man, the myth, the legend. I'm proud to call him my friend. Welcome, Scott Baio. Thanks so much for being on here.
Not sure I can live up to that, David, but thank you.
Now, you just moved to Florida recently because I don't see like anything on your wall back there. Have we just not hung the unbelievable painting that you have, or do you like white walls?
I have a painting of you that I have. I didn't place it strategically, but because it's probably wrapped in brown paper or in a box somewhere, along with a couple of hundred other boxes in my home here.
Oh, I thought you were going to say like in a trash bin somewhere.
No, it's somewhere. I'll find it. It's color paint. It's watercolor.
Well, you know, I do ship those to people, and I'm glad that you kept yours.
Yes. They're on your website for sale.
Exactly. Yes, that's why I can't sell any, so I just ship them out. All right, so what part of Florida are you in these days?
We're in Sarasota, which is on the West Coast.
Okay, and I heard that like the beaches are really white there.
Siesta Key, one of the top 10 beaches in the world.
Unbelievable! What, really? Wow, I did not know that.
It is. You know, so when we came here X time ago for my daughter, she's a golfer. And my wife says we should go to the beach, and I go, "What do I beach? We lived in L.A. What the hell do I care about the beach?" She says, "No." So we go to Siesta Key, and man, it is white. It is white powder sand. The water's about 85 degrees, and it's clear.
Wow.
It's magnificent. It's fantastic. It's a fantastic beach. I'm not a big beach guy, but we go occasionally. We walk and hold hands, and I'll jump in the water. And it is beautiful, David. It is beautiful.
Are the waves big? Like, are you surfing out there, or just
no,
very like?
I'm surfing. I'm sure there's other places to surf. I don't know if Siesta Key is a surfing beach. I'm not that well versed in all Florida.
Yeah. Well, you haven't been there that long, right? I mean, you haven't lived there that long. You've been now. How long has Bailey been going to school out there?
She'll be going here a year and a half after this school year.
Amazing. Well, your daughter's an amazing golfer. I also thought she was a really good actress. She was in Courting Mom and Dad.
She wasn't bad, David. I thank you for the opportunity. I thought she did a really great job.
She really did. She played a great job. I mean, it was such a fun. Such a fun little movie that, you know, obviously she was shot in a tough time. In the middle of a lot of different things going on. So, but she was great. So I have a question. So you started, when did, Scott, where are you from? New York? New York City?
Dyker Heights, Brooklyn.
Do you have still family that lives there?
Not that I know. Most of my family, some of my family, my relatives went to Staten Island. But no. I think my aunt just passed away, who was 90-something years old, my father's sister. So I think we're pretty much done. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, like, when I have here, Baio played a title character in Bugsy Malone, right? Which
right.
was a big musical. How old were you when you did that?
Well, the key word there is acting. When did I start acting? That's a debatable statement. I was 9 when I kind of got into show business.
Is that your first professional job when you were 9?
First professional, yeah, commercials and stuff back in New York.
And did you have a desire, like had anybody else in your family ever done this? First of all, are you the oldest of your siblings? I'm
the youngest. My brother and sister are 3 years older than me. They're twins.
Okay, and were they in the or your parents in the entertainment industry?
I have an older cousin who was an actor, did a ton of commercials. He did an episode of the TV show called The Monkees.
Oh, yeah.
You remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. So I asked my mom if I could start doing commercials and stuff. And she took me to his people as agent manager, and I started going on interviews and absolutely hated it. So I did that, and then I retired when I was about 12. And then something pulled me back in. Fonzie Malone pulled me back in.
I mean, is that when you were? It says like 16. You're here, that's when you joined Happy Days.
Somewhere in there.
I mean, your bio says you were 16 years old.
Yeah, so. It's 46 years ago.
I can't believe it. You're
on the exact age.
Okay, but was that the first thing back that pulled you out of retirement, or did you, or that one? Okay, yeah. How did that happen? How did Happy Days come about? Well, Roger, do you remember Happy Days, by the way?
Well, of course. Are you kidding?
The biggest show in the world at the time?
It was. Absolutely. And I remember Scott vividly, of course.
Back when there was only 3 networks. I had quit because I didn't want to drive into Manhattan from Brooklyn, which is like driving cross country. X amount of time later, 8 months, a year later, one of my agents called and said, "Hey, I know he doesn't want to do this movie. I know he doesn't want to work anymore with this movie. I think he's right for it. Will he go and read?" Sure, I'll go and read. And I went in. I met with Alan Parker, who was directing it. And at the time, I was, straight. I was still straight living in Brooklyn. I was a little Brooklyn wise ass, and I didn't. If I didn't know you,
did you grow out of that, or are you still doing that?
You don't ever grow out of it. And I had if I didn't know you, I didn't like you. So I went in and read for him, and I threw the script at him and walked out. And he cast me because the role was already cast. They had cast somebody, and when I came in, I guess I had the right attitude or whatever, whatever. Thank God. And so I'll give you the abridged version. So that movie was bought by Paramount, Bugsy Malone.
Back when you were young, when you were like 10 or 12.
I was like 13 or 14 years old.
Okay.
So that movie was bought by Paramount, and they screened that movie for Paramount executives. One of those executives was Gary Marshall. And in that movie, I don't know if you remember it, there was a guy named John Cassisi who played a character named Fat Sam. He was brilliant. He was, killed it. And everybody in that theater at Paramount Studios wanted him because he was very funny, very extroverted, very loud. And Gary said, I like the other kid. I like the kid with the suit. He looks like somebody that girls might like. And he brought me out to California, and I'll give you some more trivia. He put me in the Pinky Tuscadero pilot, and then he had a show called Blansky's Beauties with Nancy Walker, and I did that series for a year. That got canceled, and then he put me in Happy Days.
How long were you on those other series before Happy Days?
Blansky's was 1 season, I think.
That's like 20. Is that 22 episodes? You had done 22.
You know what, David? It was probably 13. That was the first buy back then, But Pinky was just a pilot.
It's still a lot, though, when you think about it. You're 14, 15 years old, and you're doing these shows, and you did Bugsy Malone, and those are massive things, and you're, it just makes sense when you rolled into Happy Days how much of a getting by being cute, Scott.
You don't really grasp what you're doing,
right?
Yeah, I'd walk in and say a couple lines, and I'd walk out, and okay. And then as you get older, you learn. And then when I got on Happy Days, I was still just getting by. And then just by, I guess, through observation, almost through osmosis, you just sort of learn it.
Yeah.
And I always found it interesting sitting behind the camera and watching what was going on, just to sit there if I wasn't doing anything.
Happy Days, how you come on, were you in the pilot of Happy Days? You were from the...
No, the show had been on for like 3 years, I think, before I got there.
Wow, okay. And so when you joined on, had you watched the show? Had you ever seen it before?
Of course.
Okay.
I mean, who didn't watch the show?
I mean, that's the honest truth. It's like however many Americans there were with televisions, it was probably 200 million or something like that every week. The biggest show in the world. Did you, so you had seen the show, were you excited to go on there? Or was it like, were you excited to see the Fonz? Like, what was your first thoughts when you went on?
Well, the first thought is, oh my God, wow, thank you. But then when you actually go to work day one, you know, you're quite nervous and you don't know which end is up. And all these people had been there for a couple of years, and here I am, the new guy on the block. And what do I do? I don't know what to do. So it took me, from the moment I walked on the set I was with my dad for the first time. It was frightening. And then Henry Winkler, the great Henry Winkler, ran over to me and just gave me a hug and welcomed me. And I was like, wow, okay, that was quite a relief. But even still after that, it was my first entrance into the show in front of the audience.
Now you all know my cousin Chachi.
There's your little boyfriend.
Hold your breath. How you doing, Blue Eyes? What are you selling today, shrimp? Oh, no, I sold all the shrimp to Alfred. But for you, I got no smear lipstick.
I was hoping that the stage would burn down. Things like that. You just don't want to make the move because it is. Frightening isn't a strong enough word.
It's like jumping off a cliff, right? Like a really high one.
Yeah.
And you don't know how the landing's going to be.
It's completely overwhelming. Completely.
How soon, once you got on that show, did you feel comfortable? Like when did you feel like you weren't necessarily always jumping off a cliff? Like you're like, okay, I can actually do this. Like, oh,
I'm still not comfortable. I guess.
The podcast is a big hit right now. I mean, we have a lot of subscribers, and it is just going gangbusters. So I understand the nervousness.
You don't have an audience of 300 people.
No, totally. There's no live audience out here, believe it or not.
So to answer your question, when did I start feeling comfortable? There was a moment in time where they wanted to fire me because I was doing two shows at the same time. Gary Marshall had an idea for this Vegas show, and I think the name of it was Who's Watching the Kids, and I was doing them both at the same time. Jim Belushi was in that other show, and I got a big head, and I stopped performing. I thought I was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then Gary, they wanted to fire me, and Gary came in and said, no, give him a chance, let him get through it. I have faith in him, let him get through it. And he talked to my dad, and my dad talked to me. And from that moment on, I decided that I needed to work or else I was going to go back to Brooklyn, which I didn't want to do. And I'd say after that, when I started working and started understanding what was happening and understanding what I was doing and getting it, probably once I got all that and I kind of felt comfortable with that, I was okay. But even still, that moment when the curtain goes up and you go in front of the audience, it's scary.
I remember one of my acting instructors told me this years ago, and they're like, if you don't actually have that, a little bit of that, your heart racing, the pounding of it, then you're probably not exactly in the right headspace you're supposed to be in, because you might go out and you'll be flat. It will be flat,
Yeah.
And I've noticed that, like in plays or even in doing the whatever performing thing that I was doing, is that when I feel comfortable, it inevitably, it seems like the energy or the humor doesn't quite click. Like, do you feel the same way in that?
Yeah. So I think that nervousness is a good thing, but then after
the nerves leave once you get.
Yeah,
you just have to.
You're off and running, and you just have a ball.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much even the last show I did, See Dad Run on Nick at Night. You know, I was in my 50s, and I still before a show I would be petrified.
Amazing. Yeah.
And then you get through.
You've done like 9 shows at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I've done so many. I don't
TV,
know how many episodes of situation comedy, but there's still that fear of, please don't let me screw this up. Please let it go right. Please let the jokes work. Please let my first line come out clearly.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing every episode.
Happy Days. How many years did you do Happy Days then?
7 or 8.
Okay. Because you got a spin-off off of Happy Days, right? Didn't you?
Yep.
With Aaron. So was it 8 years after? Okay, wait. I want to back it up just a second. You were doing 2 shows at once. You were doing Happy Days and you were doing the other one.
Yeah.
Way
back.
Right. Way back. But when did that one end?
That went 1 year.
Oh, only 1 year. Okay. So then you had more time. And was it after that show closed that you felt like you got your, I don't know, mojo back, so to speak, that you, in your focus of really diving into it? Or was it during?
After that I learned I was going to be fired. Sure, I had a lot of fire.
So then, I mean, still though, Happy Days is the biggest thing in the world. Like, do you remember like your headspace? Like, did you have a big head at the time, or was it like, because you had to be you were a sex symbol almost. You were the probably the best looking kid on the planet, you know, in all the tabloids. And you still are. You're still very good looking, by the way. But but at the time, the world had a spotlight on you so bright. When you rolled into the spinoff of the show, how did you keep your? You're such a cool guy. I met you after you had done the See Dad Run show. Yeah. In church is where I feel like I saw you. So. But you're so down to earth. Like, were you down to earth at that time, despite how you're under a massive spotlight?
Well, don't forget, David, very different back then. Mm-hmm. No Twitter, no Facebook. So it was limited. Your publicity was in newspapers and magazines.
Yeah, but all the magazines and all the newspapers were focused on you.
Yeah, I mean, and you're on the cover of People, you're on the cover of TV Guide.
Yeah.
And all that, and it all seems kind of cool.
But people can't see you off. They can't see your regular life stuff.
It builds. It slowly builds where you'll go out after, you'll go to dinner or whatever, and people will look at you and then they'll approach you. And then there are moments when you can't leave the house because you're followed, or it's just everybody in the restaurant is coming up to you, which is wonderful, but you just want to sort of have dinner, and you have to be gracious. And yet I am gracious because these people, they pay your bills, right? The moment that I knew that there was something really, really something going on is I did an autograph signing at a car show. I don't know if you're aware of what that is. They have these big, giant convention centers in the wintertime all throughout the Midwest.
Like probably pre-Comic-Cons, I would imagine, right?
Kind of. But it's usually, it's wintertime when people want to get out of the house, but it's too cold, so they do other things. And I walked into an arena, and there were 15,000 people waiting for me. And I was just I didn't know what they were doing there. And the guy who was running the show said, "These people are here for you." And I went, "Oh, my dad was with me, and he took, he made sure I was okay." And it was incredibly, it was awesome. It was frightening. It was all that stuff. And you at some point you feel like a Beatle, right? Because it's just, and I'm not, but it's crazy. But
he's the 7th unknown Beatle.
Yes. I'm the 6th Marx brother.
The 4th stooge.
I'll tell you this. So it's all wonderful. It's all great. And it does affect you. It absolutely does. And it's cool. And you're on the news. and it's all that fun stuff. And as this was happening, Henry Winkler, who taught me so many things, said to me, sat me down, because he knew that I was getting really popular. He knew it. He could see the audience reaction during the filming of a Happy Days episode.
Now, did his, I have a question, just put a pin in your thought here. Did he at all, because the Fonz was the big thing at the beginning of it, right? I mean, the Fonz was like an icon for Happy Days. All of a sudden, the young buck comes in, you, right? And now, obviously, the girls are going crazy for you. The screaming is going insanity. Like, how did Henry take that?
Henry was the king, and I mean that respectfully. I'll tell you exactly how he handled it, David. And it was one of the really good moments in my life. During the filming of Happy Days on a Friday night at Paramount, we were not allowed to engage with the audience outside of the set. Gary Marshall wanted to keep this mystique. We never broke the fourth wall. Unless you screwed up a line, then you could mess with the audience. But you never went outside. If you had to leave the set, you went out through a set door. You never went around the third wall. You never did that. After the show, we were allowed to go to the audience, and they would all ask for autographs and stuff. And the show was over, and I was walking by, and Henry was the crowd was raised up a number of feet. And Henry was there signing. And as I walked out, there was this roar. And I looked, and they were looking at me. And I felt incredibly uncomfortable because Henry was there. And I didn't want to step on his toes in any way. So I just froze. And he looked at me, and he went just like this. He went, like, come up to the railing. And I went up to the railing, and I didn't know what to do. So he just, I would listen to him. Hi, how are you? What's your name? Very nice to meet you. Thank you for coming on site. So I would parrot what he was doing.
Yeah.
And so by him standing there, he taught me. So he was very gracious about it. I mean, he was unbelievably gracious about it. And I think, David, if I was a creep, I think he probably might have had a problem, but I don't know. I can't get in his head. But he was more than gracious about it.
Was Happy Days, did it finish when you got your spinoff, or did you just go to college for the spinoff?
We were kind of doing, Erin and I were kind of doing both. They brought some other actors into Happy Days. But we worked on the same studio at Paramount. And so I would go up, and maybe every other week I would do a Happy Days episode or something like that. And I'd go back and do Joanie Loves Chachi. So that's kind of how that worked. And Joanie Loves Chachi only went 17 episodes.
Really?
So, yeah.
Like one season? It only ran one
even.
season?
Not even.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ironically, I remember Joanie Loves Chachi. Like I would have thought it would have ran 4 at least, or 5.
No.
Wow. What happened?
It sucked.
Were you guys in college? What was the scenario? What was the setup for Joanie Loves Chachi, besides the fact that you guys were in love?
My mother, who played by Ellen Travolta, married Al Molinaro, who played Al, and we moved to Chicago. They bought a restaurant, like a dinner theater kind of place with a apartment on top, and I was the guy who was the house band. And then Erin Joni came out, and Joanie Loves Chachi, and that's how that all happened. But I wish to this day that I had never done that show.
Wow. Okay. Because you just didn't think it was a good show, or because of whatever internal conflict,
everything.
Or
because of the way it unfolded, because of just conflict within the show, conflict within the production. A lot of things just went bad. I always had this thought, like if I would have stayed on Happy Days and not done that show, I could have done anything I wanted. I probably could have gotten a 2-year order to do a show. But, live and learn. And at that time, I was huge. I mean, I was probably, I'll give you something, and maybe me and Larry Hagman, probably 2 of the biggest guys on television.
I believe it. I actually didn't know Larry Hagman as much as I know you. I didn't know Larry Hagman as much as I mean, obviously he had a big career, but
J.R. Ewing.
Right.
Ewing.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, I grew up with watching you, not Larry. I mean, I did watch some of Larry Hagman as well. But Joanie Loves Chachi, that was a big, I mean, that was you. Like, it was your show. It was your spin-off. Did it just because it didn't connect to the audience as well? Is that also whatever, the ratings didn't do well? Like, why 13, what did you say, 17 episodes? What a random number.
When they first came to me to do this, so we want to do 4 episodes to test it out. And I said, okay. And I believe to this day, it is still the highest rated news show in the history of television. It's something like 45 million people watched it. But then they moved it. We were on right after Happy Days, and they moved the time slot and put us up against Magnum PI, which was huge.
Yeah, massive.
And they put us with another show that I don't even remember what the show was, for the second half hour. And the writers that wrote the first 4 episodes were Happy Days writers, and they left to go back to Happy Days. So we were stuck with new people, and
they just weren't as talented in the writing, so to speak.
Nice guys,
yeah.
And maybe talented, but didn't know us. And then they bought 13, so that's where the 17 comes from.
Oh, got it. Okay. And so you do the 17, it ends, and then are you thinking, hey, I'm going back to was Happy Days still running at the time?
Yeah.
So
I went back to the last year, maybe, year and a half.
Okay, so you finished Happy Days off.
Yes.
Okay. So you're still massive. You still are like pulling in numbers. Is it because it was like a red stain on you because you didn't launch a show quite right, that you felt like you didn't have to be able to go do whatever show on television?
Yeah, I mean, of course you lose some luster when something gets canceled.
Yeah.
If it runs 10 years and it gets canceled, you don't lose any. But if you do 13 and it gets canceled, then your shine is not as bright as it once was.
Right. So what happens when Happy Days ends? Like, where do you go from there? Like, I mean, obviously I have a whole thing about all the different movies and everything else that you did, but like, how did you make a decision? Was it because your dad was your manager too, right? Do you go to more television? Are you interested in doing film at that moment?
During the last year of Happy Days, I get a call from a man named Al Burton. He says, I'd like to meet with your son. Can I send him a script? And sends the script, and it was the script Charles in Charge.
Oh, wow.
So I meet with Al and Michael Jacobs, who wrote it and created it, and I liked it, and signed a deal with Universal.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a big. How long did Charles in Charge last? 5, 6 seasons, something like that. 7.
I think 120 something episodes.
Yeah, it was a lot. How do you feel about Charles in Charge? You don't feel the same way as Joanie Loves Chachi, obviously, right?
No. Charles in Charge was fun. It was fun. It was just, it was a physical comedy show.
Yeah.
And, it was great. Plus, I had, now, at that point, I had all this knowledge from working with these giants on Happy Days. Jerry Paris, Gary Marshall, Jerry Paris, the great director who's gone, and Gary, who's gone. I learned so much from them. So I had all these tools in my box and started using them. And that show was just a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And that was Gary Marshall's whole thing. He says, look, man, if it's not fun, it's not worth doing. So that show was just, every day was playtime.
Did you, were you directing these episodes as well? Did you do directing at that point?
I guess middle of the way into Charles in Charge, I started directing them.
Do you like it?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Liked it a lot.
Have you done, as far as directing goes, is that like a passion of yours? Do you have any desire to direct more, or did you?
No.
I mean,
it was, and I did it for a long time after. God. After, I'm going to be out of sequence here, probably, but after Charles in Charge, I think I went right into a series called Baby Talk, which was the spinoff from the Travolta movie Look Who's Talking, and that only went a year. That was just full of issues.
Right.
And and it got canceled. And then after that, I just directed. I was directing a lot of shows on the WB, a lot of shows at Warner Brothers. And I did that for a couple of years.
Were you thinking like Ron Howard directing? Like, because obviously you were with Ron Howard for many, many years, right? Was he directing Happy Days at the time?
No.
When
absolutely not.
He didn't start directing until later.
No, he directed a movie during Happy Days called, I think, Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, wow.
I think that was the movie during summer of Happy Days when we were on hiatus. But no, we knew we always wanted to direct. I didn't always want to direct because I didn't know what it was. And then I started directing because I started seeing things differently when I was doing Charles in Charge. And I think altogether, David, I might have directed maybe 100 different episodes of shows.
Wow.
And then a few things happened where I just said, you know what, this is not fun anymore. And I said, I just don't want to do this anymore.
On the directing aspect.
Yeah, and then I quit. I stopped doing it. And then I got a call to do the series with Dick Van Dyke, and I did that for 2 years.
What was that one called?
Diagnosis Murder.
Oh, yeah. My goodness. I thought that was, but I was like, that was only 2 years? I thought Diagnosis Murder was on forever.
I quit.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And I wish that I hadn't quit.
Were you tired of the acting thing at that point? Like, I mean, after 2 seasons, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do another series after I've already logged in, 700, 800 episodes.
Yeah, it was a couple of things. I was just tired. I was just physically and emotionally tired. And
how old were you at the time when Diagnosis came?
30.
In the 30s?
34, somewhere in 94, so 34 maybe. And Dick is a great guy. His son Barry's a great guy. The other people on the show were fun to work with. It got boring to me. It was the same episode every week. And plus, at the time, Columbia came to me and offered me a very big deal to do another show. And nothing happened. So, you live and learn.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, out of all of these things, like when you look back on, I mean, the amount of like episodes, right? The television episodes. Did you just need a Diagnosis Murder? Did you feel like you just needed a break and you took a break and then you were like, okay, I can come back to acting again?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
When you give advice to actors,
don't quit a TV show. That's my advice.
Is it like at any moment just because you just never know when you get another shot at it, or what is the point?
Exactly right.
I guess you there's a lot of times that you, especially when you're younger, you don't have you can't appreciate everything that's going on because it's also going on so fast.
Right.
Like, I mean, it's a whirlwind, and then you have everybody else feeding all these other things. Well, don't you want to do this? Look at this shiny object. Come over here.
Right. You never think it's going to end. And honestly, it didn't end for me.
Yeah.
I thank God. I thank God every time I go to bed for the life that I have. And I was so lucky, David, that I just went from one to the next for whatever reason, whatever that reason is. I don't know. I could tell you stories about guys that I saw who were on TV shows who were parking my car at a hotel. And that's not.
Wait, they were on TV shows?
Yes, they would. I'm not making that up.
Right. They were on TV shows and now they're parking cars, you mean?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And I've seen many of those people. It happens it still happens, and it's sad to me. It's heartbreaking, and that could have been me. Yeah, and it wasn't for whatever reason. So you have to take what you got and just make the best of it. So I mean, unless it's a completely horrible situation and you want to get out or whatever. But I'll tell you a quick story. So I had directed this actress in a show. And I became friendly with her, nice girl. And she booked a series and it became a very big show. It was her first year. And she came to me, she called me on the phone and she says, damn it, this and that. They want me to do this and the producers, and they want me to lose weight and blah, and on and on. And I'm just so fed up with this crap. And she stopped talking and I said, quit. She said, what? I said, quit. She said, what do you mean? I said, quit the show, call your agent, have your agent find you another pilot, go read for it, you and about 1,000 other women, get it, sell it, and get it back on the air. Do that. And she literally hung the phone up on me and just went back to work.
And now every studio head always calls Scott Baio when they when they need to get an actor back. He's I
am the TV show whisperer.
The whisperer, exactly. The genie of. That's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously we produce a lot of movies, and it's just trying to get a movie off the ground is not. Sometimes it's easier than others, but inevitably there's always so many things that happens along the way. That is just so difficult to launch a movie, and we're in it right now. We're in the middle of. Go ahead.
No, I know, but you're in a different position because it's your company, and you get to pick and choose what you want to do, and then go raise the money, and so it's not like you're an actor going in to read for one of your movies.
No, totally right.
You and 500 other guys coming in to read for your movie, right? So it's and the audition process is a horrible, stupid process. Stupid, in my opinion.
Why? Why is it stupid?
Because you never get a sense of anybody. I found that if you just talk to somebody for 10 minutes, you probably get a good sense of what they're capable of doing. Because to go into a room and to read a scene for 90 seconds, it's crazy. And maybe you made the wrong choice going in the room. And I don't know what you're thinking as a director. I don't know. So forget that guy. That guy might have been the best actor in the office. So it's just hard.
When was the last time you actually had to read for something? Have you had to read for anything?
Yeah, but
he's like, no, because obviously you came out right when you're 15 years old, and you, I guess, had to read for Happy Days, or 16.
No.
And then you didn't have to read for Happy Days. And then did you ever have to read again?
I read for movies.
Yeah.
Some movies they just offered to me.
Of course.
But sure, I mean, nowadays, but look, let me qualify what I said about audition. I think if you're going to audition somebody, spend more than 2 minutes. You can spend with them a half an hour, work with them a little bit. Here's what I'm thinking. What do you think about this? Try it this way. And this way you can see if they're flexible, if they get it. Mm-hmm. Because again, to go in cold and read and have somebody's assistant read the off-camera dialogue, it's just brutal. And I've been on that end of it.
Yeah, it is brutal. Okay, really quick, they're telling me I got to wrap up here. I got 5 minutes. So I want to talk just really quick about Arrested Development, because you had such a funny character. What was your name in Arrested Development? Do you remember?
Blah, blah, blah. Which I never got.
How did we get that? Like, you didn't have to audition for that one either? Okay, so when you come on to that, like that's such a bizarre. You were an attorney, right? I think a lawyer.
Yeah. Blah 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 blah's law blah was one of the lines. But no, they just called me up and said when I played this, and I read it, and I didn't get the name because I still have some of my New York accent, so I read it as blah blah blah. And I went to work, and one of the other actors said, "Yeah, this is my attorney, blah blah blah," and I went, "That's my name? Oh, I didn't get it." And so that was fun to do. That was just. I mean, that was a whole different experience for me shooting that show. It was a lot of fun, but I got to tell you, David, it's so funny. I had no idea what that character was. I had no clue, and nobody told me anything, which is fine. So I figured this guy basically is just a name. That's it. That's his character. He's a name. So everything I played on that show was as monotone and as simple It was no expression on my face. I just said the line as written, and I didn't move a muscle. And everybody thought, wow, it was so funny when you did it.
That's so funny. Did you get nominated for an Emmy on that one?
No, they don't nominate me for Emmys.
They sure should have. That was funny. Scott, all right. Dave, you have I have like 14 pages on your bio that I have to hopefully have you back if you come back again. And we have so many more things to talk about. I hope that I get to move to Florida at some point in time and come be your neighbor.
Absolutely. You'll love it. You'll love it here. You will love it.
I know. I like the idea of it. If my kids weren't all in their schools out here, I would yank them and go out there.
Yeah, but I know. Listen, I talk to people all the time, and there's a lot of anchors around people's necks. And I had the window and the opportunity, and I just said, you know what? Let's do it.
Yeah. And you're missing a great time out here in Los Angeles, just maybe the funniest thing I said today. All right, Scott, thanks again for coming on. I hope I get to talk to you soon. Love you, brother.
David, thank you, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much, Scott.
All right, bye.
Scott Baio, wow, what a legend! What an honor to have him on. Thank you for watching us. By the way, we're just tune in every week for the White House Pod. Dare to dream. I'm talking. We have unbelievable people here with unbelievable stories and we are on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Alexa, all other podcasts platforms. But if you want to see people visually, right? Sometimes I'm in the gym and I'm listening to podcasts and I just wish I could see their facial reactions and that kind of thing. People like Scott Baio, for example. Unbelievable. What a good looking man. And Dylan, for crying out loud. Dylan's here. Hey! World's greatest social media guru and my pal. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and tell all your friends to do so as well. We love you. And live your dream. You never know what will happen. God bless you guys.